The night I found 47 messages between my wife and her, just a friend, I thought my life was over. I never imagined it was actually the beginning of the greatest love story I'd ever live. I was 24 when my marriage collapsed. There wasn't shouting. No broken plates. Just a glowing phone screen on the kitchen counter and 47 messages that answered every question I was too afraid to ask. I signed the divorce papers 3 months later. For weeks, I wandered through my days like someone borrowing another man's life. One rainy afternoon, my landlord sent me across town to inspect a leaking ceiling in another rental property before a contractor arrived. It was supposed to take 15 minutes. She opened the door before I knocked twice. She looked to be in her late 40s, dressed simply in a loose cream sweater and faded jeans. A few strands of dark hair escaped the clip at the back of her head. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, yet I couldn't stop noticing the quiet confidence in the way she stood. "You must be here about the leak," she said. I nodded. If it's still leaking. It only leaks when it rains." She smiled faintly. So today seemed perfect. The apartment smelled like fresh coffee and old books. Rain tapped softly against the windows while I climbed the ladder to inspect the ceiling. She talked more than I did. About the neighborhood, the stubborn plumbing, the roses she couldn't keep alive. I answered with short sentences, careful not to let my own life spill into the room. When I climbed down, my foot slipped. She reached out without thinking. Her fingers caught my wrist. Neither of us moved. For a heartbeat, the rain outside disappeared. She looked into my eyes, still holding my hand, and whispered almost to herself. "You're carrying something much heavier than a toolbox, aren't you?" She let go of my wrist the moment she realized she was still holding it. "I'm sorry," she said softly, stepping back. "I wasn't thinking." "It's okay." Neither of us sounded convinced. Instead of walking me to the door, she disappeared into the kitchen. A moment later, she returned with 2 mugs of coffee. "You've already gotten soaked coming here," she said. "Stay until the rain eases." I should have left. Nothing about accepting coffee from a stranger was wrong, but something about her made it feel unexpectedly dangerous, not because she was older, but because I wasn't ready to let anyone see the version of me I'd become after my marriage ended. Her apartment was quiet in a comforting way. Shelves filled with novels covered one wall. Framed photographs sat on the mantelpiece, but every frame held landscapes instead of people. No family pictures. I asked before I could stop myself. She glanced toward them. I packed those away. The answer was simple. The silence after it wasn't. She wrapped both hands around her mug, staring into the coffee instead of drinking it. "My husband left almost 2 years ago," she admitted. "He found someone else. I kept thinking if I waited long enough, he'd remember how we used to laugh." She smiled, but it never reached her eyes. "I guess some people don't come back." I looked down at my own cup. "My wife didn't leave," I said quietly. "I found the messages first." For the first time that afternoon, neither of us tried to pretend we were talking about plumbing or rain. The room fell still. She reached across the table and rested her hand gently on my forearm. "You don't have to carry that alone." The words settled somewhere deep inside me. I opened my mouth to answer, and realized I wasn't sure which truth I was about to tell. I looked at her hand resting on my arm. She seemed to notice it at the same moment I did, but neither of us moved. The rain drummed softly against the windows, filling the silence neither of us knew how to break. "I haven't told anyone that," I admitted. "About the messages?" I nodded. It made everything feel disposable. She studied me for a second, not with pity, but with understanding. That somehow hurt more. "You know," she said, almost smiling, "people think betrayal changes your opinion of the person who lied." She paused. "It actually changes your opinion of yourself." Her words settled heavily between us because they were exactly what I'd been unable to explain to anyone. Without thinking, I laughed, a quiet, tired laugh. I thought I was the only one who felt like that. So did I. Our eyes met, and for a heartbeat the room felt impossibly small. Then her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and the warmth in her expression faded. "I should take this." She stepped into the hallway, speaking in a calm voice that grew tighter with every sentence. "No. I've already told you. Please stop calling." A long silence followed. "I'm not coming back." She ended the call and stood still for a moment before taking a slow breath. When she returned, she tried to smile, but her fingers trembled as she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "My ex," she said quietly. "He only remembers I exist when he's lonely." Before I could answer, a firm knock echoed through the apartment. We exchanged a confused glance. "I wasn't expecting anyone," she whispered. Another knock came, louder this time. Instinctively, I stepped closer to her. She looked at me, then reached for my hand without thinking. Neither of us let go as the knocking continued. The knocking stopped as suddenly as it had started. Neither of us moved. She was still holding my hand. When she finally opened the door, no one was there. A small cardboard package rested on the welcome mat. She picked it up, glanced at the shipping label, and let out a relieved breath. "Just a delivery." She closed the door, but the tension stayed. She whispered. "So did I." She set the package on the table without opening it. Her fingers lingered on the cardboard as if she needed something solid to steady herself. "I hate that he still makes me nervous," she said. "You don't sound afraid of him." "I'm not." She looked out the rain-speckled window. "I'm afraid of becoming the woman I was when I kept waiting for someone who had already left." Her words settled in the room. I knew that feeling. "I spent months wondering what I could have done differently," I admitted. "I read those 47 messages so many times I could remember them word for word." I laughed once, bitterly. I kept looking for a version where she chose me. She turned toward me slowly. "You weren't supposed to compete for someone who already promised to love you." No one had ever said that to me. Not my friends. Not my family. Not even myself. I took one step closer. So why does it feel wrong being here with you? She searched my face before answering. Because we're both terrified this isn't healing. It's something else. The words hung between us. Close enough to touch. Close enough to change everything. Her eyes dropped briefly to my lips before returning to mine, and for one suspended heartbeat neither of us breathed. Then she asked, almost in a whisper. If we walk away now, will we spend the rest of our lives wondering what would have happened if we hadn't? I didn't answer her question. Not because I didn't know. Because I knew too well. Before either of us could speak again, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was my lawyer. I need to take this, I said. She nodded and quietly stepped toward the kitchen, giving me space. The judge signed everything this morning, my lawyer said. It's official now. You're divorced. I closed my eyes. 3 months of paperwork, sleepless nights, and replaying those 47 messages, and with one sentence, it was over. When I turned around, she was standing in the doorway. I wasn't trying to listen, she said apologetically. I only heard the last part. I slipped the phone into my pocket. I'm finally free. She smiled, but there was sadness in it. I remember the day mine became official. She walked to a bookshelf and pulled out an old envelope tucked behind a row of novels. I almost threw this away 100 times. She handed it to me. Inside was an unopened letter. It's from my ex-husband, she explained. He mailed it after the divorce. You never read it? She shook her head. I spent years waiting for him to explain why I wasn't enough. Her fingers tightened around the envelope. Then one morning I realized, whatever was inside couldn't give me my life back. Without another word, she tore the envelope in half. Then again. The pieces slipped into the trash. She looked at me, not with anger, not with regret, but with a quiet certainty. I don't need his version anymore. Something shifted inside me. For the first time since my own marriage had ended, the past felt smaller than the future. She took a slow step toward me. So? She asked softly, her eyes never leaving mine. Now that neither of us belongs to yesterday, what do we do with tomorrow? Her question stayed between us. What do we do with tomorrow? I looked at the rain sliding down the window. A few hours earlier, I'd walked into her apartment carrying a toolbox. I hadn't realized I was carrying a broken version of myself too. I don't want to make you a rebound, I said quietly. And I don't want to become yours. She nodded before I had even finished. I was hoping you'd say that. There was no disappointment in her voice. Only relief. I'd spent enough years making decisions because I was afraid of being alone, she continued. I don't want fear choosing for me anymore. Neither did I. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It felt honest. I like you, I admitted at last. More than I should after knowing you for one afternoon. A small laugh escaped her. I was trying very hard not to like you. Did it work? She smiled and shook her head. Not even a little. For the first time in months, I laughed without forcing it. She stepped closer, leaving only a few inches between us. "I don't know what this becomes," she said. "Maybe it's love someday. Maybe it's simply two people who met when they both needed someone kind." I looked into her eyes. "I'd like the chance to find out." She reached for my hand. This time it wasn't an accident. It wasn't to stop me from falling. It was a choice. Our fingers intertwined naturally, as if neither of us wanted to hold on too tightly, yet neither wanted to let go. "We take this slowly," she whispered. "No promises we can't keep. No pretending. No running." I nodded. "No looking backward." She smiled, and after a quiet moment, she rested her forehead lightly against mine. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Inside, without another word, we both understood that the hardest part of our story wasn't beginning anymore. It was finally over. People sometimes ask when I finally stopped thinking about those 47 messages. The truth is, I can't tell you the exact day. Healing didn't happen all at once. It happened quietly. It happened when I stopped checking my phone for answers that would never come. It happened when I realized betrayal says far more about the person who chooses it than the one forced to endure it. And it happened because of a woman I met on an ordinary rainy afternoon while fixing a leaking ceiling. We kept our promise to take things slowly. Weeks turned into months. Coffee became dinners. Long conversations became weekend walks, and eventually those walks led us to build a life together. Not because we were trying to replace what we'd lost, but because we had finally stopped living in the shadow of it. One spring morning, almost 2 years after that first meeting, I asked her to return to the same apartment building. The ceiling had long since been repaired. The rain was gone. Standing in the hallway where she had first caught my wrist, I took her hands in mine. "You once asked what we'd do with tomorrow," I said. She smiled before I finished. "I think we've been answering that question every day since." I asked her to marry me. She laughed through happy tears and whispered the same word 3 times. "Yes. Yes. Yes." Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't see when my marriage ended. The greatest loss of my life didn't lead me to the end of love. It led me to the kind of love that never asked me to compete, chase, or wonder where I stood. Real love chooses you, and keeps choosing you. Did you enjoy this story? ***. What kind of romantic stories would you like to hear next? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next heartfelt journey, ***.